Hello, I'm an Athabasca University student who was assigned a user interface design project. I was allowed to pick any domain, so I picked the dental domain that I currently work in. I work at a dental software company that does a dental practice management software package, and part of this package includes the ability to add conditions, treatments, and planned treatments to a patient's chart. This workflow needed to be redesigned because it was no longer as efficient as it could be for particular ways that dentists have adapted to using it. It was originally extremely efficient at selecting an icon from a pop-up toolbar to activate a particular type of procedure and then applying that procedure to several teeth. And then it turns out dentists currently want to be able to select a tooth, and then for that tooth they select the condition that applies to it. And for that same tooth they would also select a planned treatment to take care of it, and then the actual treatment of taking care of it. So we needed to redesign an implementation that combines several windows, pop-ups, and toolbars so that it's one easy, simple location where they can add all three types of tasks, and that it's simple, quick, and easy. So to do this design, I identified the users that would use the tasks, which are experienced dental front office workers who would receive a paper chart from a provider and then enter those treatments into the patient's chart, the electronic version. Another type of user is a new front desk office staff, so someone who isn't as familiar with the icons or the teeth, who would still have to achieve the same tasks. These front desk receptionist assistants would likely be interrupted quite frequently and would have to multitask frequently, so it would have to be a very simple, quick process that they could pick up and continue after talking to another patient. Another type of user is a treatment entering specialist. This is the kind of person that would sit in a room all day, every day, entering treatments, because he works in such a massive dental practice that someone or multiple someones need to specialize in a particular task, like treatment entry. Another type of user is a dentist who enters his own treatments, so he's likely to work in a paperless practice, and this kind of dentist is likely to need a very simple process as well that he can do right in the examination room while he's talking to the patient. Since he's likely to try to save time here or there, we'll need to be able to give him ways to correct his mistakes and also ensure that it's really easy to track the legal obligations. Another user is a specialist dental provider who would be doing maybe 3 conditions or 3 treatments or 3 planned treatments out of the 20 or 30 that we might offer all the time. So he wouldn't want to see all the other 27 or all the other 15. He would really just want to see those 3 so that he can quickly get to them every time he enters the treatments. So once we've identified users, we create tasks, and these concrete tasks allow us to create the design in a way that accomplishes all the requirements that are fleshed out by the tasks. So task 1 with an experienced dental receptionist is someone who receives a paper chart from a provider and then enters that condition in. Task 2 is a new receptionist who again has a provider come out and hands her a larger piece of paper, a larger chart that has not only conditions but also treatment plans and a selected treatment on it. And in this scenario, she's likely to be nervous and is likely to make mistakes, so we need to be able to give her ways to recover from it. The third task is Ted, who is a treatment specialist who, since he works in a separate room away from reception, he isn't likely to interact with the patient and wouldn't have a relationship with them, so wouldn't notice when he's potentially entering these treatments into the wrong patient's chart. So we need to give him an easy way to correct his giant mistake and ideally even help him to not make it in the first place. another task, Dr. Bob Chambers, he's sitting in an examination room with a patient, and since he finds extreme decay, it needs to be extracted, but the patient doesn't have the required insurance, so he defers the treatment. And it's really important for Dr. Bob to still enter the planned treatment for the legal requirements so that the patient can't sue for malpractice if something tragic happens. Dr. Mark Tillman is a specialist provider who, like I explained before, only does a couple of procedures out of the 30, so he would want to be able to separate his toolbars into favorites and extras and make sure that the extras are hidden so that he doesn't have to worry about all these extra treatments. So based on all these tasks, I fleshed out system requirements, and these requirements were broken down into things that absolutely needed to be included, things that should be included, things that could be included, and the things that shouldn't be included. And then once I had these requirements, I was able to start prototyping. And in these prototypes, I would create a document in Paint, something simple that just captures the idea or the essence of what I'm hoping to accomplish. And then, based on multiple versions of these prototypes, I was able to run through different functionality, different features like adding the extra information for certain procedures, making sure that materials are selected before pressing save, having a way to validate the treatment after it's added, really just anything that the window needed to accomplish. For instance, having a favorites and extra section that they can drag and drop or adjust the current favorites with things that aren't necessarily appearing all the time. Something else that was needed is surface selection, so I needed to create an idea for a tool that they could select the required surfaces for the procedures when that information was required. So after these prototypes were created, I did walkthroughs. Task-centered walkthroughs where I would create a task, or I would go back to the task I created before and run through very, very carefully, step by step, exactly how the user would be feeling at any point in time. So for instance, when they select the treatment add button, I've identified that it's a new concept, that before they did everything directly in the charting tab, so the fact that they now need to click a button to open up this dialog is new. So the solution would be to put the button in the same place where they would usually open up the dialog, and it would hopefully be familiar enough that they could achieve the task the same way. So I would run that for every single step in all 5 of the tasks to identify different problems and potential solutions, which allow me to continue to iterate through more prototypes, which will eventually lead to a prototype that is determined to be good enough to implement. And at the point of implementation, I used Visual Studio. And Visual Studio is a helpful tool that comes with built-in stuff like Windows, XAML, WPF. It has a toolbox, so I can actually create a window which is a blank canvas where I can place toolboxes containing default things like buttons and checkboxes into the canvas, and then I actually add code to it to make it function the way I want, different events, a lot of different creative things like this surface selection tool. And based on that, I was able to create this prototype. This top corner of the prototype, since I can't have the video file being too large or else it times out, unfortunately, starts off with the patient name and patient ID. This was important for Ted, who needs to ensure that he's at the right patient so that he's not adding the treatments to the wrong file, which would be tragic. And if Ted was in the wrong file, he has the option to delete, or he also has the option to press the cancel button. Oh, that didn't work. Which I can't show in this small window. There we go. Okay, there's a cancel button. And part of the concept of this design was that the user goes in and adds a whole bunch of treatments, but it doesn't actually save to the database until they press the OK button to exit the window. That way, by pressing cancel at any point, they don't have to manually undo all the changes that they've made. They can just do one mass cancel. At the top of the window, we have teeth. Teeth can be selected, which are identified by the border. There's a mouse over property, which allows them to see where their mouse is at the time. You can click and reselect teeth. The teeth are numbered based on the Canadian tooth numbering system. We have 3 toolbars: the conditions, plans, and treatment toolbar located inside this window. Each of the icons are labeled, so someone who is, say, a new user, like Barbara, identified in task 2, she'd be able to come in and quickly identify the procedures that she needs to add, even if she doesn't recognize the icon. But the hope is that she'll eventually recognize the icon, and then even faster, she can recall these icons as opposed to determine them. When they come in the window, they select a tooth, say tooth 45, and then they would select a condition. So for instance, we'll select the crown condition, which brings up the extra information needed section, and the save button is disabled, which is only enabled once they've selected a material, so that they can't add a mistaken treatment in. So once they've selected a material, they can hit the save button. This allows the condition to display in the added treatment and conditions area, which allows them to have the chance to validate and delete if they didn't actually want it. So if they wanted tooth 43, for instance, they could delete and quickly change to tooth 43, to the same crown, select, and create it properly. Part of the joy of this window is also, let's go with the implant button. And the implant button has extra information needed for both the surfaces as well as the materials. So when they select a surface, you have a mouse over, and an actual selection has a different color. So they select M and B. If they change the surface to, say, metal, it's color-coded to that particular type of material, so they can switch to different colors, which allows the user to validate as they're going. At any point, they can click Cancel Add, which means that it would just wipe out the information currently selected, everything but the current tooth. They can change the tooth as they're going, which allows them to add the same procedure to just a different tooth if they need to make a correction. They can select a different condition if maybe they wanted it to be a planned implant as opposed to the other one. It doesn't retain information through different procedures, since there are conditions and procedures that have no truth requirements. So for instance, if we press the root, it would just directly add the root, which displays in the window. Right, so we have our root. Another part of the functionality of this window is the expansion of the toolbar. So we'll notice that this allows task number 5 to be accomplished by having the specialist have only 4 of the treatments, or in this case conditions that he generally uses, appearing. If he wanted to add more of these icons up, he would go into edit mode, and then he can select different treatments and move them up. You can also take other treatments and move them down if you didn't want them in anymore. And when he's finished editing, he can hit Finish Edit. And if he wants to contract the toolbar, he can hit the contraction button. If you have one expanded toolbar and you hit another expansion, it closes the original because we can't have too much space taken up. But this window should accomplish all of the current functionality. Thank you.